Emperor Gao Lei, the commander of the Wulin armies, sat upon his throne in Qing's Pass and inhaled the aroma of his tea. The morning was pleasant, as red maple leaves slowly drifted by on the wind. Seated in front of him, old and tired, white-haired and worn, was a Zhang known as the Blue Dragon, but his true name was Tian Zhilong. "Is it already that time again, old friend?" Gao Lei said to his trusted general. "Is it already time we return to such unpleasant business such as this?" "Indeed, how little time cares for the desires of mortals like ourselves," Zhilong agreed. Gao Lei nodded at the pleasantry. It was all empty formality, not to be taken seriously. But this was their annual meeting, a meeting of the Emperor of the Wulin dynasty and his faithful general. Each of his commanders would meet with the Emperor once during the year as a formality so their loyalty and accomplishments could be discussed. But Gao Lei had no reason to fear Tian Zhilong's loyalty. For the time he had been a humble Tian Di, as a mere youth of 22, the Blue Dragon had proved himself an outstanding, unwavering titan. Back then, Gao Lei himself was still only a minor warlord, working to obtain the lands of China for himself and crush the other rival warlords and armies that stood in his way. Zhilong had progressed rapidly through his ranks until he had become one of the youngest Zhangjuns in all of the Wulin at only 40 years of age. And more than this, he was popular. His soldiers were devoted to him, and they often whispered about how he should be the warlord of the Wulin and not Gao Lei. Of course, he had been questioned about this. "Do you seek my throne?" Gao Lei asked all those years ago. "Of course not, my liege," Zhilong had said with unquestionable sincerity. "I have no desire for the throne on which you sit. It is a most wretched thing to even ponder taking from you what is rightfully yours. I am your sword for so long as it pleases you." And Gao Lei had been pleased with this answer, for the Blue Dragon's loyalty to Gao Lei was as sure as his loyalty to his own wife. Yes, the beautiful Li Mei. Gao Lei remembered how he had been there at their wedding all those years ago. How happy they had all been. How glorious the ceremony, and how gorgeous the bride and groom had been. It had been truly a moment of revelry and joy that would never come again in their lives, and truly Gao Lei was happy for Tian Zhilong and his wife Li Mei. For war was ripe in China, and the armies of the Wulin marched ever onward. No time for love or matrimony. This was surely a special occasion. And through every single battle, no general could have compared to the ferocity, the ingenuity, or the cunning of the Blue Dragon. In each engagement, no matter the odds, Tian Zhilong found a way to overcome, and to persevere, and to return to his wife Li Mei. He was hailed as a hero of the Wulin, and a favorite of the warlord. "Why do you not drink your tea, old friend?" Gao Lei asked. "Is it not to your liking?" Zhilong shook his head sadly and sipped away. "It is not that, my liege, It is simply that the weight of my past failures weigh on my heart." Gao Lei looked on sadly to his old comrade. "My friend, I must again ask you to let the past go. It does not do to dwell upon it so. It only hurts you." Tian Zhilong did not answer but sipped his tea quietly, his mind and heart on the same thing Gao Lei was remembering. Yes, it had been almost 10 years ago when Zhilong was nearing his 50th year. The war for China was about at its end, and soon Gao Lei would be the true emperor of the Wulin dynasty, and with the Blue Dragon leading his vanguard, who could stop him? There was just one final hurdle to overcome. The Feng Huang Ling Chu, the second great warlord who now held the Jade Throne of China. His armies were the last of their obstacles to power, and Gao Lei would, of course, send his finest to confront them. It was his greatest test, but Zhilong would meet it all the same, proud and bold as ever. But things had not gone as the great Blue Dragon had planned them. That morning, as he prepared his armies to meet the enemy, The valley between them, vast and filled with frightening mist, as if in anticipation to claim the souls of countless, stood before them. Tian Zhilong, the blue dragon, rode forward on his horse and called out to the enemy, and I'm demanding that their Zhongjun step forward and face him. If he be a man of honor, let them duel and save the lives of thousands of men. They could determine the course of the battle with their fight alone. Let the true champion reign, he thought. Their answer was one of the most underhanded and dishonorable actions any general had ever bore witness to. Dragged by the hair, the Zhongjun of the Feng Huangling Chu brought forward the screaming Li Mei, Tian Zhilong's beloved wife. In the night they had sent spies into the dragon's hometown and kidnapped his wife to use as a hostage. The blue dragon, for the first time in his life, was dumbstruck with disbelief. The general held a spear to his wife's stomach and stated his terms. Tian Zhilong would bend his knees and submit to the authority of the Feng Huang banner, or his wife's blood would be the first to stain the fields. It was a cunning trap, Gallet thought to himself. If he accepted the terms and bowed, then the morale of his men would be devastated, and they would surely have lost. But if he attacked anyway, and his wife was killed as a result of this decision, it would crush his spirit, and he would lose all effectiveness as a leader. In either case, the blue dragon was destined to fail. My liege, the old dragon whispered, I regret to tell you that I am still unable to break the hold of the Iron Legion. They still maintain their control of the central crossroads. My friend, there's no need to fret. These knights, Vikings, and samurai, they are mighty, yes? Far more than the riffraff we've dealt with before now. I fully expect them to continue to find creative ways to elude us still. You have nothing to be ashamed of. I cannot live with more failures to you, my liege. Nonsense, my friend, Gallet smiled sincerely. You have never failed me. And it was true. You have never failed me. Not even on that dreadful day, Gallet thought. My love, Mei Li had cried, do not bow to them. Take their heads. Do not show mercy to these dogs with no honor. They are pigs, all of them nothing but swine. Tian Zhilong could not bear to see his wife. A blade pointed square at her chest, screaming at him, begging him to end their lives at the risk of her own. The general above, holding his wife by the hair, glared down the dragon and gave him one more warning. The dragon's hand quivered. His hold on his horse's reins had loosened, and he prepared to step down and surrender. Between his liege and his love was greatest. But with a scream of rage, Li Mei roared at the man holding her, and then with a fury that even the gods would have envied, she threw herself onto the spear, blood exploding from her chest and out of the back of her own wound. The general holding her had to let her go in shock as the dragon's wife impaled herself willingly upon the spear. The roar of the dragon was louder than any thunderclap. Tales are still told in the halls of the Jade Palace of the rage that Tian Zhilong felt. The fury of his voice and his hand stormed across the battlements and upon his own soldiers as every one of them charged with a will to storm hell itself. Not one Feng Huang soldier survived the battle, and for every loss the Wulin suffered, they paid back 20 times over. The whirling motion of the Guandao that the blue dragon wielded cleaved heads from shoulders and brought down the mightiest of warriors. And through tear-filled eyes was the dragon's will done. And with the battle ended, as all battles must end, he ran to the body of his wife and fell to his knees beside her, removing the spear from her breast and holding her. Her eyelids flickered weakly as she tried to look up at the man she had died for. Why? He had asked. Why? Because I refused to play a hand in your defeat. She whispered her last, and was no more. If the dragon's roar was terrible, it held nothing to its wail, for even the sky itself could not hold back its tears for the loss of so fine a creature. My liege, Tian Zhilong bowed his head low, his tea finished. I humbly request to retire and to take my own life. every year during our meetings you ask me this, and I always refuse it. And I again refuse it, Gao Lei answered somberly. You promised to be my sword while it pleases me, and it still pleases me. As you wish, sire. Tian Zhilong lifted his head again, his face set, prepared for another year of war before he would again request his own death. For to the Blue Dragon, the loss of his wife was the greatest loss he could ever bear, and he wanted nothing more than to die himself in return to her. But he could not do this, not until his service to Gao Lei, the emperor, was finished. I do wish it. I hate wasted life, Gao Lei explained. I believe this session is concluded, my friend. You may return to your men and prepare for your new orders. Tian Zhilong bowed and dismissed himself, walking heavily and somberly from the room. Gao Lei watched him sadly and shook his head. Oh yes, my old friend, I do hate wasted life. Your wife should never have had to die. If only she'd played her role as I'd wanted. What would you say if you had learned that it was I who encouraged the Fang Huang to use her as leverage? Would you be angry with me? Or would your grief at the knowing lead you to break like a porcelain vase? I did not intend her to die. No, I wanted you to die, my friend. You're far too clever and good at what you do. It's true what your men said back then. This throne would suit one such as yourself, which is why I must keep you housebroken, begging me year after year to pay me with your life, because you're useful too, you know. Yes, my beloved, my hated Blue Dragon, you are both my greatest threat and my greatest weapon. Go forth, slay my enemies, but always be anxious to slay yourself at my whim. That is your fate, my old comrade. Your wife's death is not what I sought, but it served a purpose in the end. So I can't bring myself to shed tears over it, for it was not a wasted death. Through her I have broken the greatest dragon in China, and with you I shall break the unbreakable Heathmore as well, shall I not? Tian Zhilong, Blue Dragon of China.